So let's hear China expert Tamás Matura first, providing an overview of the situation and answering our first question, namely, is Chinese influence changing the attitude of the country towards any domestic or EU-wide policies?
In the past 7 years, the so-called China-Central Europe cooperation, the 16+1 cooperation, has been attracting a lot of attention in Western Europe, in Brussels, and in the institutions of the European Union. The main reason for this criticism is that Western Europe believes that China tries to divide and rule Central Europe through this so-called 16+1 cooperation. I don't really agree with that. I think Europe is up to the challenge to divide itself, and the Central European countries do not contribute to this division more than, for example, Britain nowadays. Still, some countries like Hungary and the Czech Republic seem to be more supportive towards China when it comes to certain political issues. So, for example, in the past few years, it's been Hungary and the Czech Republic, or their leadership, I should put it this way, what contributed to certain political endeavors of China. So, for example, Hungary tried to make the EU unable to present its common voice when it comes to the South China Sea issue. It was also Hungary or the Czech Republic what kind of blocked the EU common policy on the human rights issues in China. But I think we have to make a very important distinction. When it comes to economic issues, Central European countries, including Hungary, including the Czech Republic, always stick to Germany, always stick to the economic interest of Western European countries, and they only support certain political initiatives of China, but I don't think that it goes beyond a certain level.
So how does this look like in the Czech Republic? Do we see anything like this?
Yes, there is a discussion now about the new law which is supposed to control investment coming from the third countries to the Czech Republic. It's under the EU regulation, but the Czech Republic would like to have its own specific law on that occasion. Then there is a discussion about the usefulness of the group of 16+1 because it doesn't bring promised investment from the China to the Czech Republic, which is again the case of Mr. President Zeman, who has promised a lot of Chinese investment.
What about Poland? What are the interests of China there?
So the Chinese influence in Poland is rather not visible. It's mostly, if existing, then it's hidden under specific lobbying for specific projects. And then it is mostly visible when the government takes action against the obviously Chinese interests. Several times already, Chinese businesses tried to make a bid in a public tender for works being paid from the EU subsidies. This has been so far stopped in time. However, Chinese investors are pushing for this because a precedent could open them door for expanding on a very lucrative European market.
Expanding their influence over the European market, but for that, they would need more regional allies. Can we consider any of the V4 countries to be China-friendly? And if yes, to what extent? How does the bilateral relationship of these countries look like with China?
Czech Republic is considered to be Chinese-friendly mainly because of the policies of President Miloš Zeman. He is influenced mainly by the richest Czech businessman, Petr Kellner, who has a big business in China, so who is interested to have a friendly business and political relations between these two states.
For the time being, Poland is not considered China-friendly. Recent arrest involving Huawei officials in Poland, and previously cancelling a project to build up a train depot in Poland that would be part of the important part of the Chinese trade coming from the east to Europe, were seen as examples of Poland's chilling down bilateral relations with China.
I think it's super important to understand that China has a certain level of influence in certain Central European countries, but there is no public support in the Central European countries for the pro-China policy of these governments. So I think when we look at the details, it turns out that it's mostly about, the pro-China policies are supported by certain governments. Viktor Orban in Hungary, the Czech president, Viktor Ponta in Romania, still he was in power, but there is no public support, there is no real support in these countries for the pro-China policy. Therefore, I presume if and when these leaders step down eventually, the pro-Chinese attitude of these countries and the foreign policy of these countries will fade away.